So going into this season, the NBA added a new feature to the game, which was basically the play-in tournament, which basically meant the 7th and 8th seed in the conference wouldn't automatically make the playoffs like previous seasons. The 7th seed would have to face the 10th seed, and they would have to win 1 out of 2 games to make the playoffs, and the 10th seed would have to win 2 games in a row against the 7th seed, and the 8th seed would have to be the 9th seed 1 time, and the 9th seed would have to win 2 games in a row against the 8th seed to make the playoffs. And as of late, there have been a few people and players complaining about the play-in tournament. So today's video, I'll be discussing whether or not the playoff tournament is good or bad. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and help me reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video to start a conversation with me as I do respond to all comments. And play that intro. Before we get into whether or not the playoff tournament is good, we have to figure out why the NBA added it in the first place. And in my opinion, the biggest reason the NBA added the play-in tournament was to try and spice up their ratings a bit more. Because it's no secret that the NBA's views have been going down as seasons have passed. So I think this tournament can improve their rating, because often at the end of the season gets kind of boring, since most fans have already seen enough from each team and a lot of the narratives dry out, and that leaves there only to be basketball to watch. And to diehard NBA fans, that's not a huge problem. But to the average or casual NBA fan, it can be tough to watch. So the NBA is probably hoping that this tournament can help their end of the season ratings, which I definitely think it will. Also, the NBA might have added it to help teams that don't necessarily make the playoffs often have a higher chance. This tournament can also help counteract tanking, which has been a kind of a big problem in the NBA, since more teams will have more motivation to be competitive and a winning team, since if they make the tournament, they will at least have a chance to make the postseason. But to answer the question of whether or not the play-in tournament is good, I'm going to first talk about the positives. The positives is that it simply gives more teams a chance and a reason to be competitive, because in past seasons there was a bunch of teams in the league that were just completely trash, but right now in the NBA it seems that it's been reduced a lot. So teams like the 76ers, Suns, and others are now good teams, and teams like the Pelicans and Grizzlies, although they're not top 8 in their conference, they're still solid teams that can beat you on any given night. So it just makes games more competitive, because there's plenty of teams that don't only focus on making the 8th seed, they can just focus on getting the 10th seed and still have a chance to make the postseason. Another reason it's good is because it brings more entertainment to the league. Because I'm not going to sit here and act as if I'm not very excited about this tournament. Because in my opinion, I think we'll see some of the best games this season in those games. Because those games are going to be filled with desperation and hardworking players, since they definitely don't want to lose, which I think will lead to close games, because teams will be trying their hardest in those games, which I think will bring more entertainment brand of basketball. Also, I think it will just help the league's ratings. The play-in tournament can also allow us to see different teams in the playoffs that we wouldn't expect to see. And some people, and especially fans of the teams that are outside the playoffs but barely right now, like the Warriors, Grizzlies, Pelicans, and others, they definitely are not complaining about this tournament. And personally, I'm a Raptors fan, and I think it would have been cool if we could have got the 10th seed and played in the tournament. Also, I don't think it's crazy to expect some huge upsets in the tournament, which can be very entertainment. Another reason this tournament can be good is because there's a few teams who have struggled with injuries, and teams that would have probably made the playoffs this season if they were healthy, and I think it would be good to see them at least get a chance. Teams like the Warriors, who have missed Steph for a few games, along with plenty of other key players. So basically, the good things about this tournament is that it will bring excitement, that it will give more teams a chance to make the postseason, which are solid reasons to have it, but in my opinion, I think there's more negatives. Now, to get into the negatives about the play-in tournament, there sort of is a lot. The first and main one to me is the fact that I think it's unfair to the teams that have worked hard during the regular season to get the 7th or 8th spot just to end up losing it because they had 2 bad games in a row, just to a team that has significantly less wins and to a team that has simply not been better than them. It honestly is very unfair, and if my favorite team was in that position, I would be really angry. In the bubble, it wasn't as big of a deal since certain teams played less than others and there was a limited amount of time, so they made it whereas you had to be within a certain amount of games as the 8th seed to get in the tournament. Also, it was just the 8th seed last year, not the 7th seed as well. So I can understand that format, but this season every single team is playing the same exact amount of games, that is 72 games. So no team is at a disadvantage and no team is at an advantage. And if they really wanted to do this tournament, they should have done it where the 9th and 10th seed has to be a certain amount of games behind the 8th or 7th seed. Because if we look at the standings right now, the Boston Celtics are a whole 5 games in front of the Wizards in the standings, which is actually a significant margin of games. I don't feel like they should be forced to play extra games and put their whole season on the line when they are simply way better than the Wizards, and they have proved it throughout the whole season. And if you take a look into the Western Conference, the 7th seed Mavericks are 4 games ahead of the 10th seed Spurs. And I think that's a significant enough margin as well. I wouldn't be too opposed to this format if it was only the 8th seed, because a lot of the times the 8th and 9th seed are extremely close. For example, this season I believe the 8th and 9th seed are in both conferences is only separated by like 1 game or a game and a half, which isn't that much. So I wouldn't be complaining crazy about that. But still, even that is still kind of annoying because the 8th seed simply has the better record. Why should the 9th seed even get a chance to try and beat the 8th seed when they simply weren't as good? This format also can make teams worse in the postseason, since before the playoffs start, teams usually get a bit of a rest, but these teams will be forced to play 1 extra game or 2 extra really intense and gritty games, which can make them tired or not give them as much energy as they would have had if they got the rest just like everyone else, which I don't think is fair. Another negative thing about this is that you might have heard that the NBA is likely to continue with this format for the foreseeable future, which changes not necessarily a lot of things, but it does change some things, because there have been a few 7 or 8 upsets in the first round of the playoffs in NBA history. And for example, let's say the Mavericks lose in the play-in tournament to the Grizzlies and the Grizzlies take their spot. What if in an alternate timeline, the Mavericks go on to upset the Jazz or the Suns? Because honestly, I don't think that's the most impossible thing. But if the Grizzlies end up beating them in the play-in tournament, we might not ever see that upset happen. And I don't think that will happen, and I doubt it will happen, but I'm just saying that it could happen. I think the NBA was fine before, and they didn't necessarily need to change anything. What if they did want to change something? It should have just been between the 8th and the 9th seed if the records were between 1 game apart, in my opinion. But that's just what I think. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know whether or not you agree with me or disagree with what I said in this video. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and to reach my goal of 1,000 subscribers. And comment on this video to start a conversation with me, as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.